Can you imagine living in dark, cramped quarters for 23 hours a day with only 1 hour outdoors? Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Tu.
And I'm Kristen Lee. Thanks for joining us. Imagine spending almost every waking moment inside a concrete box the size of a small closet for 29 years. It happened to one man. Reporter Ben Smart spoke to him, and he's live outside Central Prison in Raleigh.
Kristen, an estimated 95% of inmates eventually make their way back into society. For this reason, Public Safety Deputy Commissioner Tim Moose says it's the function of prison not only to punish inmates, but also to rehabilitate them. One man says his time in solitary confinement was not rehabilitative. It was nothing short of torture.
In 1970, Robert Hillary King was imprisoned for a robbery conviction. 2 years later, King was found guilty of murdering a prison guard. Courts lengthened his prison sentence and sent him to solitary confinement. That murder charge was overturned in 2001, but for 29 years, King was locked away in a tiny Louisiana prison cell.
Solitary confinement means that you are sitting in a room perhaps 22, 23 hours a day, 6 by 9 by 12.
In the heart of downtown Raleigh sits Central Prison. Prison guards escorted us through winding hallways and 6 automatic metal doors. Finally, we reached what guards call restrictive housing, solitary confinement cells. Prison authorities send inmates here to punish them, to protect them, or to maintain prison order.
I'm here inside a restricted housing cell. There's not much room to walk around, so I'm seated here on the bed. There's a metal toilet, a metal sink, a mirror, a cupboard for their items. Some inmates spend up to 23 hours a day in a cell like this one. No one in, no one out.
Guards tell us they transfer food and mail through a locked trap door. According to the latest 2015 data, in North Carolina, almost 3,500 inmates are currently in solitary confinement, about 10% of the entire prison population. Of those inmates, 38 are in the highest security, HCON, which means they're inside that cell 24 hours a day, leaving only for medical and dental appointments. Prisoners call this the hole. Stop Torture Now coordinator Christina Cowger says this treatment doesn't help prisoners work through their problems.
Solitary confinement is unquestionably torture, and it's torture of the rawest kind and of the cruelest kind because it strips prisoners of their humanity.
For Robert King, the negative effects didn't take 29 years. He says one body part was damaged in just 6 months.
My eyes, I had moved in a cell where I couldn't see no more than 6 feet in front of me, and what happened is my eyes became acclimated to that short distance.
King is now a free man and lives in Austin, Texas. He says his life's mission is to campaign against the abuses of the criminal justice system. But for thousands of other prisoners, time in solitary confinement continues.
They tell me, well, why aren't you crazy? I let them know, wait, I didn't tell you I wasn't crazy. But I don't think nobody can live through that 29 years in solitary confinement and be sane. The fact that it doesn't appear that I'm impacted, I'm greatly impacted by it.
So this prison here behind me is Central Prison. Inside there are 2 types of solitary confinement cells, one for general inmates and another for mental health inmates. King told me he kept from going crazy by reading, writing a book, and teaching himself how to make small candies.
Next week, we'll have a report about what the North Carolina Department of Public Safety says it's doing to change how inmates are treated and the future of prisons. Solitary confinement in North Carolina prisons could be changing. Reporter Ben Smart tells us that starting this month, the State Corrections Department is partnering with the Vera Institute of Justice, a national organization that helps prison systems find better ways to treat inmates.
Joshua Panter keeps a careful eye on prison security.
I'm a correctional lieutenant here at Central Prison.
It's his job to supervise officers and keep inmates safe. Panter says restrictive housing or solitary confinement is one way the prison maintains order.
For inmates that are healthy from a mental health or medical perspective, restrictive housing has helped them to be more compliant with the facility rules.
Inmates could be locked in a cell like this one, up to 23 hours a day. For the other hour, inmates might go to an outdoor exercise room like this one. concrete walls, dim lighting, and high windows. A scathing 2014 report from the UNC Law School says solitary confinement is torture. More than 225 pages, the authors don't mince words. Solitary confinement is ineffective at decreasing violence, preserving public safety, managing monetary resources, and violates human dignity and justice.
I'd say that it's torture and that it's very slow torture.
Prison Services attorney Elizabeth Simpson represents inmates.
Human contact is as necessary as food and water. The only time they have a human touch them is when they're being escorted, when they're in full shackles.
Public Safety Deputy Commissioner Tim Moose says there are legitimate reasons for sending an inmate to solitary.
It can be as a result of a disciplinary issue, a behavior issue, a safety issue.
The UNC Law Report explains further. The two most common disciplinary infractions are disobeying an order and profane language. These rule violations usually don't involve physical evidence. It's up to the officer's interpretation. Rehabilitation Director Nicole Sullivan says a new partnership with justice researchers is bringing change.
It's going to look very different, like programs, like very intensive programs that allow an inmate to work their way down and back into general population because they're achieving a certain milestone.
Prison officials say they aren't sure if solitary confinement is helping prisoners improve themselves. In Chapel Hill, I'm Ben Smart reporting.
The UNC Law Report also notes that the #1 complaint from inmates about solitary confinement has to do with due process when they're found guilty of prison infractions.